Today's guest is a man whose story shows how early exposure can shape a life long before addiction takes hold. By 13 he was smoking weed, by 14 he was on ecstasy, and by 50, while working on the streets of London with his dad, he'd stepped into the world of the packet.
It might be like a 12-hour binge, it could be a 24-hour binge, or it might be starting one day and going to bed 2 or 3 days later. But as soon as I've used, I just want more and more and more. I would just lose all control over the quantity I'm taking.
And what type of paranoia did you experience?
I barricaded the back door. I'm sitting at the top of the stairs with a hammer and a bottle of brandy next to me. I've got a flashlight on my head, thinking if they come through the door and I turn that on, they're not going to be able to see me properly.
There was something different about that one day. What do you think that was?
I think it was when I realised I couldn't do it on my own and I need some form of help. I sobered up and I thought I just can't do it anymore.
What's the biggest reward from breaking your addiction?
Life's just got a lot easier. You know, today, like, I can show up. If I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it.
Elliott Wald, addiction specialist. Coming clean with me.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Coming Clean with Me. I'm Elliott Wald, addiction specialist, and today's guest is a man whose story shows how early exposure, environment, and generational patterns can shape a life long before addiction takes hold. Growing up in Southend-on-Sea, on a council estate, Matthew was surrounded by drinking, cannabis, and chaos. By 13, he was smoking weed. By 14, he was on ecstasy. And by 50, while working on the streets of London with his dad, he'd stepped into the world of the packet. What began as trying to fit in turned into 20 years of addiction, costing him relationships, stability, and eventually his home. But after years of shame, psychosis, and trying to get hold of his life together, something finally broke inside him. 16 months ago, Matthew made the decision to get clean. Please welcome Matthew Thomas. Hello, Matthew.
How you doing? You all right?
I'm very well. Thank you for joining us on Coming Clean with Me. I thought I'd do something slightly different today, and what I did is I printed out a case history form. Now, with every patient that I see, I do a full case history to get to understand their usage and their background. Mm-hmm. Now, that normally takes a good 45, 50 minutes just to take the information together. And obviously, during a podcast, we're not going to do that. So I'm going to narrow it down, but just so the audience get an understanding of your background from a case history perspective.
Yep.
So let's start with some basics. How old are you, Matthew?
39.
39. And your occupation?
I'm a gas engineer.
A gas engineer. And you're married, is that right? You live with someone or
no,
you're single?
I'm divorced from my ex-wife.
Okay.
But I'm currently in a relationship now.
But do you live on your own or you live in a relationship?
I live with my partner, yeah.
Yeah, you live with your partner, okay. And any children?
I've got 3 children from my past relationship.
Okay, and their ages?
They are 9, 12 and 15.
9, 12 and 15. I'm not going to go into the medication side or any of that because that is all a little bit personal. Let's go back 16 months ago. Let's imagine that you are sitting in front of me 16 months ago, still using.
Yeah.
How often do you use?
Depending on work, because I work on a rota, so it would be around work. So it could be sometimes once a week for a day, sometimes for 2 days at a time, sometimes every few days.
So when you say work on a rota, let me understand that. What does that look like?
I might work for 5 days and have 4 days off, or I might work for a week and get a week off.
Okay. And then, so then are you saying on the days off?
Yes, the days when I'm not at work, then obviously that's when
So let's go back 16 months ago and let's say you're on a 5 on, 4 off. What does that look like in terms of your usage? How often would you use?
I mean, I would never intend to use for a long duration. So the problem I had was it could be thinking, let's get half a packet. And I'd always buy it like that as well. Do you know what I mean? Because I wouldn't expect or be thinking I'm going to be up for a long time. Then I'd do a bit of that. I might be out for a few pints, but then I'd want to go home because I wouldn't really feel like socialising. I was living with a friend at the time, so we was quite happy to be in each other's company. And that's what we'd do. Then we might get another one. And then sometimes, depending whether I can get any more or I haven't got any money there, then I might not. So I might end up going to bed. But if it was readily available and the money was there, it might be all night till the next morning. If we was out doing something with a group of friends, maybe some sort of special event, we'd probably go for a couple of days, you know what I mean? Yeah, so generally, you know, it might be like a 12-hour binge, could be a 24-hour binge.
And so it was a binge use, and how
Mm.
often were the binges?
Um,
Say weekly, a monthly, a how often?
yeah, I mean, it was minimum once a week.
Once a week. So
Yeah,
once a
minimum,
week,
yeah.
it was a binge.
Yeah. And then sometimes it would be, you know, it might be a bit every day for a few days, or it might be the case of starting one day and going to bed 2 or 3 days later. And that could depend on if I'm standing on my own or if I'm going out with a certain person and they're very much the same as me. It would just get chaotic and it wouldn't stop literally until we've either got no money or can't get hold of anyone.
And once you started, this the type of person that starts on a binge, and once they start, they can't stop.
Yeah.
Right. Is that because you didn't like the come down? You wanted to keep going until you literally passed out? What do you think that was?
For me, because I'd be thinking about it, so as soon as I've used, I just want more and more and more. So a lot of the time, you know, if I was with someone else, they would be holding it, or they would have it, because if I had it, I was just constantly doing it. So I would just lose all control over how much and the quantity I'm taking at a time, how many I'm buying. You know, I didn't have any formal control over that.
And what would you say you were spending on an average week?
Again, depending on how much money I've got, I mean, I could spend a few £100 easily.
What, 200, 300? What?
Probably 300 quid, yeah.
So £1,200 a month.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay. And were you drinking alcohol with this?
Majority of the time, I would start drinking alcohol, then again, it would either be can't get any alcohol, so that's why I would stop, or why I'd stop, or sometimes I think I'll just have a little ticket, and I'd sniff without drinking sometimes.
So sometimes you were a dry sniffer,
Yeah,
and sometimes alcohol was your gateway.
yeah,
So you did both.
I did both. Yeah,
Okay. And you used for a period of 16 years. Oh, sorry. How long did you use for? I didn't get that down.
yeah, I'd say probably just over 20 years.
20 years. Sorry, I did get that down. 20 years. And during that 20-year period of time, did you stop at any given point?
I mean, I'd probably say over them 20 years, the longest I would go without really thinking about it or knowing I've got a problem would be I'd maybe get through a week with the weekend and then get to the next weekend and use. And then, so I'm 16 months clean, but I would say probably for maybe 2 years, I kept trying. I wanted to get clean. So, you know, I would do a month and then use and drink again. And then I'd do a few weeks and use. And then I think I got to like 3 months and then used. And I realised that just psychologically how my mind was working, I just couldn't kick it on my own without any sort of change in myself, if you know what I mean.
So you were using, then stopping, and then using and stopping. So a relapsing, a cycle of starting, relapsing, starting, relapsing.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. And what was the number one reason that you wanted to stop at that time?
I mean, a lot of my life, I did feel less than most people, so I didn't really feel confident. You know, I worked with my dad, and we worked on markets, and we used to sell tickets for events and stuff like that. So, sort of ducking and diving for probably till I was about 25. Then I had my first child, and wanted to change. So, went and done like a plumbing course. Then I got gas qualified. Then I went and got a real job, as we'd say, you know, like a proper straight job. And obviously I want, like, you know, and I'd still go back to my old life, in and out of it, and wouldn't really leave my old life. But while I'm sort of progressing with, obviously, you know, trying to be a father for the first time, holding down a job for the first time, I still couldn't stop drinking and using.
Okay. Let's go back a bit. So now I understand that you were a once to twice a week user. You would use on a binge, and basically you're dictated by the amount of money that you could spend. If you had 300 quid to spend, you'd spend 300 quid. If you had £100 to spend, you'd spend £100. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, so it'd be like that, or with the work with the tickets, sometimes I would earn really good money over a couple of days. So that would enable me to have like a massive binge. And I could end up spending 500, 600, 700 quid. I might be out, or we might be at a party, or we might have some friends round, and I would just keep buying it. I wouldn't care who's paying and who's not, and the party would go on and people would come round because they know that's what I'm like, and then obviously no one's there at the end of it when you're fucking skint and, that sort of thing.
You would just spend whatever money you had on using?
Yeah, not everything, I still paid bills, paid rent, but there would be times when I'd prioritise drinking and using over paying the things that need to be paid, and over the years, obviously that got worse, got in debt, that sort of thing. But in the moment, I wouldn't say it was easy money, but I'd earn money quickly and then just be on a high from that work and then straight into using.
So you got such a buzz from making the money.
Yeah.
Was this money you grafted for, or money that came easily?
I worked for it. So like I say, we was tickets out. So we would buy and sell tickets at, it might be a concert, a festival, football, and sometimes you might earn £1,000 or you might earn 200-300 quid. We'd travel about, and a lot of the time we'd be drinking and using while we're at work. Do you know what I mean? And it was very much that sort of lifestyle of being a geezer and all that. And, I'm in London, I'm meeting people and there's some right characters and sort of that come part of my identity. And then I'd get back home and I'd be the sort of like, the Joker, the character, and I'd enjoy playing that role. I'd be like, oh, I'll get that, I'll do that, and sort of trying to be the big man in a way, do you know what I mean? Trying to fit in
that environment of people around you.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, so I'd spend time in London, then I'd come back and spend time around my friends that I've grown up with, and like telling them mad stories, and they're all laughing, and would be out, and I was quite a character and a jokey person, and I wouldn't say I liked to be centre of attention growing up, but I very much was when I was on cocaine.
Okay. So let's go right back from the beginning. Tell me about growing up, your family, the environment, what it was like for you.
So, growing up, we was in a high-rise in Southend, me and my mum and sister, like my older sister. My dad, we used to see my dad occasionally. He's an alcoholic as well. Sometimes he'd turn up, sometimes he wouldn't. So, it was very much us three. And then my mum met another man, so we had a stepdad for a while.
Was it a loving environment?
I would say so with my mother, yeah. And even my stepdad had a fairly good relationship with him. But as I got a little bit older, I noticed my older sister wasn't getting on with my stepdad. Then I'd hear arguing and shouting between my mum and my stepdad, which wasn't a very nice feeling, quite fearful around that. Then I would say I noticed, obviously, that he wasn't very nice to her. Then got to about 13 and confronted him, and then after that he moved out. And then at that time I'm sort of seeing my dad a little bit. My dad now lives in London, so he'd pick us up, we'd go there for the weekend. And I did miss my dad, it was nice to spend time with him. And then he would go to work, like I say, selling tickets and stuff. And then, I would just go with him and not really do anything, but just wanted to spend time with him. So I suppose I did feel a little lost. I didn't know that then, but I understand that now. Do you know what I mean?
And what was your experience at school like?
So obviously being as tall as I am, I was massive at primary school even. So, I was always getting in fights with older kids.
For people listening back home who have no concept, how tall are you?
I'm 6'6".
6'6".
Yeah. So I remember, I think we got arrested for some criminal damage when we was just leaving primary school. And I was 5'11" because I remember him measuring me. But yeah, I was much bigger than everyone else at school. So maybe I realise now, maybe I was a bit of a rescuer, whereas people would start on some of my friends and I would step in and wouldn't like it. And then we got to high school and very much the same. I was fighting 2-3 times a week because of my height, everyone thought that I had something to prove, but I didn't really, So I was fighting quite a lot throughout school, yeah.
What was your social life like growing up?
Social life, so we moved out the flats to another council estate in Southend, and then I was hanging about the older kids. So I was out with them quite a lot. We'd be playing run-outs, running through people's gardens. Delved into a bit of shoplifting at the corner shops and stuff like that. So I suppose maybe that was one of the first little buzzes that I got out of something. And then I would go between that group and my school friends pretty much from the age of like 13, 14, probably 12, 13. We would just be out on the streets. We'd be together every day and every night. Most of my friends all come from pretty similar backgrounds. And yeah, I wouldn't say life at home was bad, but it did feel like they was my family, if you know what I mean.
Tell me about how your addiction began.
So like I said, I can still feel the buzz now, but, you know, nicking a few chocolate bars, nicking some porno mags out of the shop, things like that. And then it went on to like holding the door open and nicking 30 beers and things like that as we got a bit older.
And then?
Used to get a buzz out of that. Never really went with crime and that, never really delved too deep in anything, you know. Like I say, we used to sell tickets, it's frowned upon, but we wasn't really hurting no one, and, you know, like, didn't really go any further with that. But yeah, I noticed a bit of a buzz from that. And obviously as well with the fighting at school, like, I did get quite a good buzz out of that at the time.
You were a dopamine seeking person.
Yeah, I didn't know it at the time, but it wasn't until I think I got to probably 19, 20, and obviously everyone's caught up with their hi-hat.
So what age did you first start sniffing?
I was thinking it's got to be, I reckon, around the age of 15.
Tell me, do you remember the first time you did a line, how it came about?
Yeah, I do remember.
Tell me.
Yeah, sorry. I do remember the first time was I had a couple of older friends and they'd gone to the shop and his older brother and mate was there and said, I have one of these. And I think I was only 14 at that time, but I had it and it sent me mad. Like, it freaked me out. I didn't know what to do. I was splashing water on my face and I couldn't really work out what was going on, and it wore off, and I never tried it again for a while. But but I think it was, you know, we discovered ecstasy, so we'd go out and have a few pills, and we'd go walking around and just spending time together with my friends and that. But I remember someone a bit older that I knew, they said they could get it and was going to a party, and I got a gram, and it was only 50 quid for a whole gram then as well. And you know, I've turned out, everyone's like, whoa, everyone's excited. And it lasted about 6 of us the whole night, you know. And I do remember that night, it was one of my friends' parties, and we had a really good time, do you know what I mean? It wasn't a problem then. I didn't have it and think, oh my God, like, it didn't really affect me in any way other than energetic and just talking all night.
Until That's just a very interesting question, because it's not like the first time you use, you reach that point of chaos. And it's a very slow burn. How long from first using on a regular basis until it became a problem?
It wasn't long at all. So like I say, about 15 when I first sort of tried it. Really enjoyed it and liked it because, I mean, we used to have a drink, but I'd either get, I don't know, do stupid stuff or fall asleep or, but with that, obviously I was wide awake, very aware of what I'm doing, a lot more confident. I would say probably from the age of from 15 to 17, you know, I wasn't doing it like everyone else was. So everyone was having a little go, but, you know, we might all be asleep in my bedroom or something like that and I'm still awake, you know, or we've been out somewhere and someone will ring, are you still going? I'm like, oh yeah, I am, yeah, as it goes. You know, we go to a party on a Saturday night and like Sunday afternoon, I'm still up. And it was then, I did realise then, around 17, 18, that maybe this is just what my life's going to be like. You know, I did think that. I grew up around drinking and a little bit of arguing. Never really knew much about drugs. I was quite naive, to be fair, before that. But, you know, I looked at my dad and he drunk. A lot of people in my family drunk. So my mum's side and my dad's side, you know, there's been deaths in the family. There's been a lot of alcoholism around me. And I just thought maybe this is just what I'm supposed to be.
Just the normality.
Yeah, and I just, obviously that's all I knew. So I just assumed that was normal, you know, and then as I got a bit older, I realised it's not normal, but I still just thought, well, that's my normal and that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. And at what point did it start to take over your life?
So I met the kid's mum when I was 21. I just come back from my beef with some lads that I knew from London. And even then, I knew I was fucked then. But I didn't really have any consequences. So I was living at my mum's, giving her a little bit of money. Then I met my girlfriend there at the time. And we was going out drinking and partying together for quite a while. But then I would just go out and not come back. You know, I might go out for 2 days or whatever. She'd be worried about where I am. And it wasn't the fact that I was cheating or anything like that. It was just the fact that we didn't want the party to stop.
It's an interesting thing. It wasn't that I was cheating, and I understand what you're saying, but think about this, right? And I agree with you, right? But let me just think about this. When you're using, it's like you're in a relationship, right?
Exactly that, yeah.
You're secretive, you're manipulative, you're focusing your attention elsewhere. You're not giving your attention in the right way. You're not present. It's exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, one day you see it. How did that affect your relationship and your relationship with your children, your relationship with your partner at the time?
So obviously I was with my partner from that time. We was together 15 years. And, you know, I'd done a lot of damage. Obviously, her trust and faith in me obviously was non-existent because that's what I would do. Then we had our first child.
Hold on. Let's just not gloss over that. She'd lost the trust in you because
I would say I'm going to the pub and
on
then just for a few drinks, maybe for an hour or two, and then she wouldn't see me for 2 days. You know, she'd be worried where I am, ringing around, worried about me. That went on for years. Then we had our first child. You know, I reined it in a bit.
She put up with that.
Yeah, I reined it in a little bit. You know, and we did drink and stuff together, and sometimes she'd go out, and you know, we was both pretty similar, but I would say that I took it to the extreme.
You were the enabler.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And had our first child, and we got our first flat together. We was renting a nice flat, and you know, the drinking and using carried on. You know, we drink and use together quite a lot. But yeah,
it's a recipe, right, for disaster.
It is, yeah. And then again, at that time, I'm still selling tickets, so I'd go to London, earn a bit of dough, end up having a beer there. I'm staying at my dad's tonight, you know, that sort of thing. So then eventually we split up for a few months. So I was back at my mum's, back in the box room, as they say, do you know what I mean? Trying to be a dad, but still drinking and using when I haven't got him. Then we got back together, you know, and it carried on like neither of us changed. We'd still drink and use, you know, we'd go out together, we'd go out separately. You know, she'd be paranoid about me, I'd be paranoid about her, you know, and it just, no communication was there. Then we've had another child, nothing really changed. And then we had my daughter, you know, and by that time I'm working, you know, throughout all of this, because
if you're both using, you're spending twice the amount of money.
Exactly that, yeah. You know, so juggling bills, you know, paying this, borrowing this to pay that. And that's what it was like pretty much my whole life, even before I met her. Do you know what I mean? I'd like, I'll do things just to earn money, end up in debt and not care about it. But, you know, it was evident it was a problem throughout the whole relationship. And, you know, the relationship was toxic, you know, whether it was because of the drink and drugs.
Do you put it down to that?
I struggle to see anything else that really caused it, but I mean, we didn't communicate, you know, it was both very different people.
You didn't communicate because you're off your tits.
Exactly that. And then when we're not, you know, it's, you know, your temper's short or your tolerance to listen's not really there. You know, I'd want to sit down and talk, she wouldn't. She'd want to sit down and talk, I wouldn't. You know, and we're blaming it. For instance, it's all blamed on me, or it's all blamed on her, or it's blamed on, I don't like this job, or, you know, forever blaming other stuff. But really, you know, I'm only accountable for myself, and, you know, I can't blame anything outside me for what I'm doing. And I didn't know that then, but I know that now, you know.
So the usage and the relationship came to an end because of the usage?
I would say that we were just coexisting together, both not happy. And again, like, she would go out with her friends, I'd go out with my friends. And it just wasn't healthy, you know. And in the end, she told me to leave. And I did, yeah.
What was your lowest point during your addiction?
At that point, I moved into my sister's for a bit, and then was okay. The thing was, I was okay. So, I'd do a week or 2 weeks because I was, at that point, I was, I'd get a few weeks or I'd get a month. But if I've been out drinking and using straight away, I feel like my life's over. I've let everyone down. And that's how I felt every time at the end of my drinking using. Whatever.
I mean, the come down.
The come down, yeah.
No.
But
So hang on a minute, let me understand this. You use alcohol and you do a line and you get this huge dopamine,
Yeah,
and then
like
at
right
the end
up
of
there.
it, absolutely, the end of it, you're not producing any dopamine of yourself.
and even
then you
you're
have
having
this-
another one, and it ain't even doing nothing. Do you know
You're
what I mean?
chasing the chase, right? And now you have a crash, and now you're in misery.
Yeah.
Okay. And some of my notes here says I knew it was a problem for the last 10 years and wanted to stop.
Yeah, so I got to the point where I would use and I couldn't even speak. And, it was especially my older cousin, we'd be out and like, I'd go to the toilet and they'd go, is he taking the piss? And he'd go, no, that's just how he gets, And, obviously wasn't enjoyable for me. I'm getting paranoid thoughts. I'm trying to speak, I can't get my words out. It was so obvious to other people. So in the end, I wouldn't want to go out, and then that's where I suppose isolating and using alone really took off. Do you know what I mean?
What a progression. That is the journey, right? The journey is most definitely socially, then eventually socially. You don't want to be seen socially. You become too conscious of yourself, and then it ends up at home. So tell me about when you no longer wanted to use out. I want to hear this, how it became isolated.
I mean, I suppose it was gradual because even towards the end, I'd still go out and bits and pieces, but mainly to have a few drinks. But I'd notice I'd start getting a bit stuttery from time to time.
Yeah.
And it'd be a bit of a laugh and a joke. Yeah, like that. But then it would get to the point where literally nothing would come out, and it was just, people would try and talk to me and I couldn't even speak. And in the end, it just got so embarrassing. But at that time, I weren't even really thinking about it. I just, I'm just trying to say what I've got to say. It's not coming out. And I'm thinking I'd rather be indoors, so I'd be indoors on my own, or wherever I'm staying at the time, I'd be around there. We might be back at someone's house or the kitchen or whatever. Everyone's chatting away in the kitchen. I'm just sat in the corner with my own little thing, just bumping and bumping. Do you know what I mean?
And did you go home and carry on your own?
I would go home and carry on my own, yeah, especially like the last year. A lot of it didn't involve any going out at all, really.
So it moved from social to just on your own?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, just on my own. So it would seem like such a nice, good idea. Like, I've been good. I've been at work all week. I'll get a little half a ticket. I'll have a few beers, maybe have a little gamble. That would always come out when I've had a go as well.
Oh,
The gambling.
the gambling would follow suit.
Terrific.
So now you have a double dopamine hit because you have the dopamine from using and then you have the dopamine from gambling. And the interesting thing about using them together is this. One is giving you huge surges, right, which is the using the cocaine.
Yeah.
And then the gambling is giving you mini surges. Even when you lose or even when you win, you're still getting dopamine surges on the possibility. Yeah, exactly. That is a double whammy. That is extremely high in the dopamine levels because you've gone from 300% with using the dopamine from cocaine, and then you've probably got another 150% from the gambling, and you're way up there. That's
It is, and like you say, it's a roller coaster because I'd say to friends, I realise in the end it was that feeling of knowing you've lost everything. I feel like that's the buzz that we was chasing because it was such an overbearing power. And even when you thought you was just about to lose everything and then won again, the win didn't mean anything. You still, in a way, I didn't want to lose, but I think that was the only solution really, to lose it all and have that overwhelming down feeling. And then obviously now I've got no money, so I've got to tick a bit of gear. Do you know what I mean?
And what type of gambling was it online?
Mainly on the slots, really.
So let me understand. Let's just break this down for you, Matthew. Let's think about this. You get on the packet, you're a few lines in or an hour in or however many amount in, and you start going, oh, get the phone or the laptop or whatever you play on the phone, I'm going to assume. And it's online, what did you say, online slots?
Yeah, so like
Online
fitnesses,
slots.
yeah.
Wait. From a psychological point of view, online slots. Okay, so what you've got, flashing lights,
Yep.
sound,
Yeah.
winning music,
Yeah.
losing music. So that's getting your adrenaline. That started to release the serotonin from the brain circuitry. That starts to release the dopamine from a different brain circuitry. And then you're chasing the loss. So you're trying to do that. You're not on the same logical pathway because you're using.
Yeah.
And you're trying to get back the money that you've lost.
Yeah.
And now let's think about this. We call it gambling, but I'm just going to call it throwing things away because a slot machine is a completely random act, correct? There's no skill involved.
No.
It's not like you're playing a level of skill with another card player and you're reading the signals and the signs and you're thinking about the cards you've got and whether you make the right suit and the right... You're playing a random game of sounds, flashing noises while you're racking up lines to search for dopamine while you are experiencing paranoia.
Yeah.
And what type of paranoia did you experience?
I would think the very same people I bought the gear off are going to come through the front door. I don't know for what reason, but there was times in the last year of my using where I barricaded the back door. I'm sitting at the top of the stairs with a hammer and a bottle of brandy next to me. You know, I've got a flashlight on my head.
A what?
A flashlight, thinking if they come through the door and I turn that on, they're not going to be able to see me properly.
Say that again.
So I'm sitting at the top of the stairs. Obviously, I've still got the packet there. I've got a bottle of brandy next to me. I've got a hammer and I've got my head torch on because I know it's that bright. And if they come through the door, I know it's going to deter them. Why are they coming up the stairs? So I'm sat at the top of the stairs because I feel like I'm at an advantage point.
I get it.
So that's just like one scenario.
Okay. And this paranoia, did you have other effects of paranoia like this?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in a relationship, I would think, you know, things with my ex-partner. If we was out with friends, I might think, you know, that they seem too pally but sometimes we'd be indoors and it would just be me and her and we've had a few drinks, she's gone to bed. And then, you know, I'm paranoid someone's going to creep into the house. Again, paranoid about the police, but there was no reason to be. I remember one day it was really windy, or one morning, and the fence panels were going, and I'm thinking people are climbing over the fence. And I think a lot of that would come if maybe I've run out of drink or I've run out of money, and now my brain wants to fixate on something else. That would normally be when, it wouldn't normally be like throughout the whole night. It would more than likely be when I've run out of things to do.
So while you're occupied,
Yeah.
you're not experiencing paranoia for you, right?
For
Different
me,
people
yeah,
experience it
yeah.
different ways. But the moment that your mind's not occupied or focused, you have thoughts just seem to come into your mind. And those thoughts are paranoia of fear, anxiety, someone's coming. And there's a reason behind that.
Yeah.
The reason behind that is this. When you use, it releases such a huge surge of dopamine. And if you think about your brain like a dual carriageway, and it can only fit so much dopamine along that dual carriageway. It can only fit so many cars traveling on the dual carriageway. When you introduce more dopamine than you have room for in your dual carriageway, what happens is two things. Your synaptic cleft can't cope with it. This surge of dopamine overstimulates your brain, and deep here in your brain, there's a part of your brain that attaches meaning to dopamine. And the meaning that it attaches to dopamine is always fear and anxiety, which leads to paranoia.
Yeah.
So as your tolerance, which is what you noticed, increases, as the quantity you use increases, and the speed in which you use that quantity, the paranoia is going to surge. And that's what you experienced.
Yeah.
And it's a scary thing. And here's the crazy thing, right? Even while you're having paranoia, did that make you stop?
No. That's the funny thing about it, isn't it? Because I've been there and experienced other people in it, and myself as well. And, you know, even that you're thinking, oh, my chest is pumping. Oh, like, oh, I want it to stop. And as soon as it stops, you have another line.
I mean, that's the definition of madness.
Exactly that.
So tell me about, you reached a point where you just got to your lowest ebb and you decided to do something about it. What was that lowest point?
I think it was for me, like, for a long time, you know, my family, my ex-partner's family, a lot of people would comment and say that I'm a good dad. You know, I'm always there for my kids. I'd never let them down. You know, there might be a time where I'm hungover and we won't go where I said we're going to go, or I said I'd get them something that might have to be the next week, you know. But over the years, I like to think of myself as a good dad, and a lot of people externally thought the same. So that, in a way, made me think that I was all right because I wasn't letting my kids down. And then, obviously, I lived with a friend for a year. He put a roof over me. He had a really good friend of mine. We both had kids, so we'd party when we didn't have them. When we had them, we'd do things together. It was really nice. And they come, and I was just like, I didn't have a drink for 30 days it was, and I got in and the boxing was on. Because that was it. I tried to stop while my friend was still using at the time. And I'd use every now and again. And in the end, you know, I got in, had a couple of lines and that. And then the kids were coming the next day, and I just, you know, I sat there. It weren't enjoyable. I paid all my bills, but I think I walked in, had 3 or 4 lines, gambled the rest of what I had in my bank. I had about 3 beers, and about 3 in the morning, I just thought, you know what? Like, I sobered up, and I thought, I just fucking ain't doing this anymore. I just can't do it anymore.
Had you not had that thought for 20 years?
Yeah, I'd had it before, but
many times
something just snapped inside, and you know, the thought of letting my kids down and not giving them what they deserve. And as well with me, you know, a lot of people, they're like, oh, you're quite intelligent, Matt, and, you know, you're throwing your life away. And I did think that about myself. I want to be able to see what I can really achieve in life. And I think all of that just hit me at once. And I haven't drunk or used since then.
But you had you had a 10-year period that you didn't want to use for, that you felt the same way.
Yeah.
Here's what I find really interesting and that I want people to understand. In that 10-year period, you also felt you were letting your family down. You also felt that people told you you're quite an intelligent man and that you should be achieving more. You had that for 10 years.
Yeah.
But there was something different about that one day.
Yeah.
And if you could bottle it, what do you think that was?
I think where I kept, you know, I'd do a few weeks or I'd do a month, and I kept trying to stop. And, you know, and I was stopping, but I couldn't stay stopped. And I was just sick and tired of keep going. Obviously, like, my life was improving at that time, but I was sick and tired of going round, even though it was the same cycle but less frequent. You know, I think it was when I realised I couldn't do it on my own and I need some form of help. And I was willing to ask someone for help, really. I think that's what it come down to. I think before...
Did you not ask for 10 years?
Not really, no. I mean, the last couple of years of my using, you know, I went somewhere, met some people that they'd been clean for quite a while, and they helped guide me through a few things, and I just didn't really fancy it. I thought, it's not for me. And then later on, you know, I dipped in and out of it, some different meetings I went to, stuff like that. And I could see there was something sort of on offer, but I just wasn't convinced it was for me. And I think maybe thinking I could do it on my own, you know, thinking like, well, I'll keep stopping. But
well, you are doing it on your own.
That's what I mean. But I just couldn't stay stopped. And, you know, I've got some good men around me, and, you know, if I'm struggling with stuff, I talk to a couple of different fellas that I know, and they've been through the same experience, and life's just got a lot easier. And, you know, today, like, I can show up. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. You know, and I'm not out there letting people down and messing people around.
And what do you do for your mental well-being now?
So I call it prayer and meditation. I mean, I'm not part of any sort of religion or anything like that, but I do feel like I conceded to my innermost self at some point that I'm an addict and that it's got to change. So I feel like I'm talking to maybe my innermost self. You know, I'll do some form of affirmations in the morning, and I'll sit sometimes with music on, sometimes with a guided meditation. I feel that really helps. Throughout the day, I do really try to not hold on to anything. You know, if someone says something I don't like, I try not to let that bother me too much.
Would that have been one of your triggers to use before?
Yeah, I think letting things play in my mind, you know, it could be, for instance, in a relationship, someone said something I don't like, and, you know, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to work, I'm doing this, you know, but now I can see things from other people's point of view. So I can see from other people's perspective in a situation rather than thinking about myself.
And what about structure? Like, do you go to the gym? Do you exercise? Do you have a
Yeah,
routine?
it's funny you say that because I moved into my new apartment just under a year ago, and there's a gym downstairs. And I was going gym before I moved there, and I didn't use it for about 2 months. But I go gym occasionally, a couple of times a week, maybe. I like a nice walk down the seafront because I live right on the seafront.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So you go for walks.
Yeah.
So you spend a lot of time, thinking and being at one with yourself.
Yeah, I try not to spend too much time in my head, but at the same time, that's how I find gratitude, especially in the mornings. You know, a lot of what I've had in my life, or still have in my life, has always been there, but I'm looking at it differently now.
And how's your relationship changed with your children being 16 months clean?
I mean, my oldest son is 15. We've been to like a lot of football away games and been to a few concerts, and he's been out of me when I've been drinking. You know, there's been a few of the lads and a few of the our kids and that with us.
Would you give him a line?
No, of course not.
Why
no.
not?
Because
Didn't you do that at 15? He must be missing out, surely.
no, he's not
Why
missing out
not?
on anything, and he knows it as well.
Why not?
It's just not right, is it? Do you know what I mean? And you know, when
Right.
No.
Come on, why not?
when he's older, he'll work things out for himself. Do you know what I mean?
And
But
what are you going to do to help him on the path of...
well, that's what I'm doing now. So I'm leading by example. So, you know, we've been to, for instance, we saw the Arctic Monkeys, and I was drunk then, and was with a friend and his son as well. And then me and my son went to see Oasis in Manchester in July it was, and I'm stone cold sober. Just me and him drove up there, stayed up there for a couple of nights, had the best time of our lives. Was hugging each other, both had tears in our eyes. Told me how much he loves me, and he said to me, "Dad, like you're such a better person now." You know, my other two children notice stuff as well, but they're a bit younger, so they haven't really experienced as much with me. But for instance, we was down the seafront about a year ago it was, and we walked past somewhere, and it was only like a little cafe, and my son said, "Oh look, Dad, they sell beers there." And my little girl, she said, "Why are you saying that? You know, Dad don't drink." You know, and they like there has been occasions when I've been out and I've had a couple of zero beers, and my little girl be like, "What's that?" You know, like making sure. And I said, "Like you haven't got to worry." Do you know what I mean? And they do. Like I have asked them questions, and they've said like, you can still be a bit stressful sometimes, and especially in the mornings trying to get them ready. But as a whole, you know, I can see my relationship with them is a lot better.
And what do you think was the most challenging thing you had to overcome to get clean?
I think one of the main things was thinking that I'm not ever going to have anything to do. You know, majority of my friends grew up the same way as me, and we like a drink and we like a little go. Thinking that I'm going to lose all my friends and not going to have anything to do. But the reality was, at the end, I wasn't doing any of the stuff I thought I was going to miss out anyway. So that was one of the hardest things. Thinking, you know, like, oh, what about birthdays? What about Christmas? What about weddings? But again, the reality is, when I was drinking and using, I wasn't present at any of them events anyway. Do you know what I mean? So in a way, my head's just trying to say to me, look, come on, you still want to do this, you still want to do that. But I think over a couple of years of keep trying to stay clean, I just realised that my head tells me a lot of bullshit. Do you know what I mean?
Last question. What's the biggest reward that you're experiencing today from breaking your addiction?
Because life is very different, and I'm so grateful. You know, I've met a woman of my dreams. We're in a caring, loving relationship.
Oh, I heard the croaking in the voice there.
The relationship with my children, you know, we went to Tower London Sunday, and just like being present in every moment. You know, the train journey there and back was the best part of the day out. We're playing little games on the train, and you know, I'm very aware of what my kids are saying, and I'm listening and I'm responding. You know, my mum hasn't got to worry about me now. She still does, but she doesn't have to. You know, she's not worried where I am, what I'm doing. You know, I've got an older sister that's got children. I'm there to help her. She's 90 days clean today as well.
So, hang on a minute. What's your sister's name?
Louise.
Louise, 90 days. Good on you, Gil.
Yeah.
Proud of her.
Yeah, very proud. Yeah.
So 90 days. So were you the inspiration?
I like to think so. So, you know, I definitely feel like there's a ripple effect. So some people, you know, they might think that my life's better than theirs. That's why I can do it. My life's easier. That's why I can do it. I never really had a problem. That's why I can do it. But the reality is, if you just put some work into yourself, you know, and get honest, I just feel like what you do has a ripple effect. Some people might get funny with you, but like a friend of mine that I was living with, I rang him when I was a year clean, and I said to him, like, I just wanted to say thanks. Like, as much as we partied hard together for quite a while, I said, like, thanks for putting a roof over my head. You looked after me. You really helped me out. And he's like, well, when you coming for a beer then? And I said to him, look, the fact is, it just ain't worth it for me anymore. I said, like, he goes, you must think about going for a beer. I said, yeah, I'd like to go for a couple of beers. I said, but the thought of waking up in the morning, even after a few beers or half a ticket, just the feeling about myself again, I just couldn't go through that. And he's like, all right, no worries. And he won't ever ask me again. We'll still talk and that, but now he understands why I don't want to do it. Do you know what I mean? And I just think once people can see your progress, I don't try and showboat or make out I'm any better than anyone. Like, I've got open arms to anyone. I've got friends and family that have run me struggling, and I want to help them. But you know yourself, like, unless we're willing to help ourselves, it just it can become too painful trying to help people. So I've realised that there's only so much I can do.
This is true. And also, you know, it's all very well and good wanting to help people. And I think it's an admirable thing. And I see a lot of people who've been through addiction doing that. There are a couple of things that trouble me, like, how do they deal with an ab reaction if the person turns around and says they've been abused, or they've been raped, or they've been through trauma, or they've got psychological problems, or they have ADHD or PTSD? And that does worry me, because I see it more and more, because they're talking to someone and then all of a sudden this person has an ab reaction, which is an emotional cleansing in psychology, that something suddenly comes up. And if you don't have the tools or the training or the years and years of studying to be able to cope and address this, that can leave the person in a really bad state. So I think you're absolutely right with that. Matthew Thomas, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming clean with me.
Nice one. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks.